Matt Lenihan Boxing Social, in association with Empire Fight Start and R Kings. We're here, Frank Smith, Las Vegas. I trust your trip here was smoother than the one to Australia, because I'm not joking. I see this big list all in red and my flight's on time. I'm thinking I'm very lucky, and I experienced the worst turbulence, and it must be ever. I see people throwing up everywhere, and then I'm looking at your stories going, I don't know where I'd rather be. So, smoother trip.
Yeah, I mean, it took us about 56 hours to get from Orlando across to Sydney, but it was we got there in the end. Uncle Jimmy's wedding was a character that I made up, just trying to convince people to let us on their flights, which ultimately didn't take off anyway. So, you know, it was an interesting few days. I think I've decided I'm just going to change my Instagram into a bit of a wind-up page. I've got a video of Eddie, of him eating a sandwich like he was in love with it. And I saw a load of people, because it was at Boxing King Media posted it. It was like, why can't people just let people let themselves enjoy themselves? Why have people got to film? And it was actually me, just, you know, on a wind-up.
Who said that comment? Was that just a comment on the thing?
Loads of people, obviously thinking it was random people filming Eddie eating a sandwich.
Just you playing the part.
Just me being me, basically.
Well, look, a good fight week. Obviously, Sandy Ryan, matchroom fighter, goes into this rematch with Mikaela Mayer. Fingers crossed with no sort of pre-fight drama like the last fight. Knowing Sandy as you do, how sort of convinced are you that she can come away with this rematch and get the victory?
I'm very convinced. Look, it's a tough fight. It's a real fight. Mikaela Mayer is a brilliant fighter, but you know, I don't think you saw the best of Sandy Ryan last time. I think she fought with a lot of emotion in there, but I think it was a tremendous performance on the basis of what she'd been through. You know, and look, there were people who said, should she have fought? You know, and I've said in a few interviews, the reality of if she didn't fight, she wouldn't have got paid. You know, that's the harsh reality of this sport we're in. She would have had 4 or 5 months out of the ring. You know, it was a close fight. She knows what she needs to do to go in there and win this time round. And I think you'll see a huge performance and a new world champion come Saturday night.
It's been a lot in the build-up with the last time. Have you seen a change in her maybe mentally for this fight? Has she changed at all in terms of, or is she apprehensive? What have you made of her, sort of how she's been around fighting?
Yeah, look, I think everyone's different in personality. You know, Mikaela Mayer is a great talker. She's going to have a massive career outside of the sport, or in the sport, but post-fighting. You know, it's what she enjoys doing as well. You know, some fighters don't enjoy this side of it. Some fighters just want to get in there and have a fight, and that's what you got with Sandy Ryan. Yeah. You know, and there's no problem with that. You know, everyone's different. Everyone's got a different angle to it. So for her, I think it's more just she just wants to get in the ring. Like, all this side of stuff doesn't interest her. It's not that she's nervous, just not what she's in the sport for, and that's fair enough. You know, and everyone's got their right to have that view. You know, look, as a promoter, obviously you want to see back and forth. You know, when you're promoting a show, but at the same time, every fighter's going to do different things. And yeah, it's not about. I wouldn't say it's nerves. It's just that's who she is as an individual.
We've got to ask you about the whole Jake Paul stuff. It's sort of been doing the rounds. I know Eddie's touched on it a couple of times now. Do you take it serious when he talks about Anthony Joshua? Do you think he's being serious? Do you think he's just on the wind-up? What's your take on it?
I think he's being serious because I think he's half delusional, in truth. Like, let's be honest, Anthony Joshua would fold Jake Paul in half. It's just the reality of it, isn't it? Like Tommy Fury beat Jake Paul. And no disrespect to Tommy Fury, because Tommy Fury would fold me in half. You know, so I'm just being completely open. But Anthony Joshua would be dangerous. But Jake Paul is all about making money and making headlines and getting people talking about it. And fair play. He does a tremendous job at that. Mm-hmm. But sometimes the delusion gets pushed too far, and, you know, it can end not in a great way.
In one sense, he's talking about Anthony Joshua, he's talking about Canelo, then says, but I would never fight David Benavidez. But yeah, he'd happily step up and fight Joshua. Do you like Jake Paul? Do you warm to him, or do you just think, I get the business, I know what he's about?
Yeah, look, he's a tremendous marketeer, isn't he? Mm-hmm. You don't have to, again, I've said it, you don't have to necessarily like someone or like an individual with the way they are. Like, you know, I think he's brilliant at what he does. You know, he's brilliant at creating brands, and he's brilliant at creating a brand for himself. Mm-hmm. Fair play to him. Like I said to him when we were at the show in Dallas, what they did was sensational. But it doesn't mean you have to warm to him or like him, and that's part and parcel of it. The majority of people probably dislike Jake Paul, and that's why he's making so much money and doing so well. So fair play.
Boxing royalties at Fight Week this week. Katie Taylor's flying about, a huge trilogy. With that sort of landing on Netflix, how does that sort of feel from a Matchroom perspective when you've sort of guided Katie's whole career, and now these sort of big fights, the last sort of 2 big fights have landed on Netflix, and with MVP, is that just a case of she goes with your blessing, look, it's business, etc.? How does that sort of marry up?
Yeah, look, when fighters work, so look, we want the fighters to do the best possible thing for their career, and with an opportunity like that, a payday like that, it's great. And sometimes I think it's like looked at upon, like we've done so much, I think, for female boxing over the last 10 or 12 years, and it shouldn't then be looked at what they do next. Like if someone else then comes in and takes it next step along, happy days. It shouldn't take away from all the work that's been, and there were people before us. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And that doesn't, what we did then doesn't take away from the good that people did before us. And the next lot shouldn't, it doesn't mean that we're not going to do things. But while there's someone there who's doing what they're doing, and great for the sport, great for the fighters, happy days. And the fighters are in a tough sport, and they deserve to get what their value is.
With this new influx of Netflix, sort of all the streaming services, Matchroom was sort of the pioneer when you think about it. All them years ago, it was a big risk stepping into that territory, leaving a great platform like Sky, and now you see Amazon Prime Sport Video doing the PBC. We're seeing Netflix now, who probably looking like they could be a major player, especially with the viewing figures for the Jake Paul Tyson and that. What do you make of the landscape of the sport? Is this now a great time to be a fighter, and more of maybe a headache to be a promoter or the ones doing the deals because of how they can value themselves now?
Yeah, look, but I also think it gives a lot clearer picture of what someone's value is, because the data is a lot more real and live around streaming. When you say like we made a big jump, people say we took a risk. I don't think we did. We believed in the landscape. We believed in the way people were digesting content was changing, and we made that move. I don't feel like it was a risk. We went with a platform that are, huge on a global scale across a whole host of sports. But people back then said, "Are you going on an app?" People have to remember we made the move. Like we decided to leave. It wasn't. We weren't pushed away. We decided to leave and go a new route. And I think it's been great. I think what DAZN are doing, they are the home of boxing. And boxing is one part of their business. When you look at their global business, like Italy, Spain, Germany, Japan, and they have every major right within those territories. And sometimes people just look at DAZN and go, "That's the box." It's like they're such a huge business that's going to continue to grow and evolve over time. They're the home of boxing right now, and I think will continue to be the home of boxing. I think other people will dip in and out for sure. We've seen it. Look at Triller. Yeah. Like, as an example, they dipped in and now, with boxing really nowhere to be seen, in truth. So I think it's an interesting time, but I think DAZN have sort of cemented themselves as the home of boxing. Boxing 3 shows a week, huge shows. Every Riyadh season event has been on there. Ring mag. There's so many amazing things happening in the sport. Investment in the sport is always good from other parties. But yeah, I don't think you can contest with what DAZN are doing.
You've also still got as well that competitiveness between the promotional companies. Obviously, Ben Shalom with Sky, but Frank Warren is now on Queensberry as well, and we've seen that relationship blossom. Eddie referenced in an interview earlier with ourselves about the 5v5, and apparently 10 potential fights that they've sent off to His Excellency, to sort of digest. What's the sort of names that we're looking at on that card? I think Justice Huni and Moses Hatama was long touted to be on that card. Is there anything you can reveal on this?
I'm not giving anything away. There's some great fights on there, some great opportunities between the promotional camps. And look, I think it's great to see, as much as the relationship is much better than it ever was, these nights are great for the fighters we all represent, between us. And the history of the relationship has created this as well. And it's making sort of I remember the first 5v5, people say it's not about the promoters, which I get, I agree. But at the same time, if it can give opportunities for fighters to be in bigger moments than maybe they would if it was just a normal show, happy days. It's good for the sport. If it's another narrative and talking point for the sport, that's what we need more of.
Last one for me, I've spoke to Bob Arum about 20 minutes ago in relation to the Nayo Inoue situation. Obviously, there's this fight that he's got coming off, but then, look, he says, MJ Akhmadov, easy for you to say, is in line to fight him next. That must be positive. I know yourself, Eddie, you've long been pushing for that fight. I know there's been comments made, not by yourself, so I know you can't answer for Eddie, but about him ducking him. But it appears, touch wood, he gets past his opponent the end of May, that mad week. That fight will finally happen, please.
Yeah, I believe we'll see it. You know, we've been working hard to get that together. MJ deserves it. You know, he deserved it many years ago, really. You know, he's been mandatory for a long time. And I don't think it's ever about Inoue doesn't want to fight him. But I think people around, maybe in the past, there's been other routes. Look, he's a huge commercial draw, isn't he? Let's be honest. You know, you've got to be realistic about the fact. But when a fighter works their way to get into that mandatory position, they deserve a shot. So I believe you'll see that fight next after May.
I did say last one, but I forgot Croke Donovan. I've just seen on my phone that's actually been made. We saw the appeal, and now we've seen a poster. What a time! The first fight, the build-up was good. This will be even better, especially with everything that went on. Was there an element of surprise with the ruling from the IBF? I know after the fight, I don't think there was much confidence from either team that'll go through, because when you looked at the highlights, the elbows and things like that. But when were you made aware of this, and how pleased are you?
An hour ago, literally probably 20 minutes before the news broke. You know, we got the notification from the IBF. Obviously, look, we represent both fighters, so they've both been going down this process. They've both put in their own appeals on the matter, and the IBF have decided that's the route to go down, and we'll see a rematch between those two guys. It was a great fight the first time around. It was a huge fight, you know, great atmosphere in Belfast, the kind of fights we want to see more of. So yeah, that's something I'm sure we'll see in the summer.
Could we see a bigger venue? The first one, I think, obviously it got the capacity extended, but with the both sets of fans, this could be a great fight for Ireland.
Yeah, 100%. Look, it's something we're looking at. It is always difficult, that gap with those stadiums, or with the cost of putting an event on in a stadium. That's just the reality of it. But we're looking at opportunities. We're in discussions. Time frames play a part of that as well. So let's see.
Frank Smith, appreciate your time. Cheers.